Hello, Grandmother Willow. How are you today?
I want you to leave me alone. Tree pun. Of course, dearie.
So I have a few questions for you. Is that okay?
I'm 400 years old. Are you doubting my wisdom?
No, I would never. First question. Everyone wants to know the truth. Is Pocahontas her real name?
Why, of course, dearie. I've known Pocahontas since she was toddling around just learning to walk. Named after her mother, that one.
Really? Because the stories have found proof that her real name was Matawaka. What do you have to say about that?
Next question.
Okay. Question 2. Was there ever really any romance between Pocahontas and John Smith?
Oh, the sweetie my dear brought to me. Why, with his blonde hair and blue eyes, and that pale skin of his, who couldn't fall for him? If I weren't a tree, I'd definitely try to get a piece of that hot action.
Do you realize at the time of their meeting, Pocahontas was around 10, 11 years old, and John Smith was around 27? What do you have to say about this?
My, what a player. If that were true. Pocahontas was a striking adult and very mature for her age. Who am I to get in the way of true love? Even if she was as young as you and your strange words say, she was old enough to be married anyway. About time, if you ask me.
Yes, even though she was old enough to get married for the time period, she was already married to Kocoum. What is your response?
Dearie, you've got your facts mixed up. That serious Kocoum never got married to my sweetie.
I wouldn't be so sure about that. There's many articles that state the two even had a child together. What is your response?
Funny joke. Next question now.
Okay then. Since we basically just did my next 3 questions, we are going to go to question 6. Do you know what the colonists thought of Pocahontas?
Do you need to even ask? Those savages knew nothing of my Pocahontas, nor did they bat an eye in her direction until John Smith started spending time with her. Why, they hated her for that before they got to know her.
Once again, I will have to correct you. We have journals, letters, and artifacts that there was actually a very good relationship between Pocahontas and the colonists. We have evidence that she was well known and well loved by them.
Correct me. My dear sweet Pocahontas tells me everything, and you're saying she doesn't? Blasphemy! I don't want to spend more time on this.
Moving on to question 7. In your movie, it was obvious that the colonists didn't trust the natives and hated them. Was this portrayed correctly?
Of course. Those greedy little gremlins only cared about themselves. Why, they're shameless.
Again, from journals, letters, and artifacts, there was a very good relationship between the two groups. We have evidence that the natives even helped them get through the winter by bringing them food. What do you have to say about this?
Those hobgoblins, they locked themselves behind those poor dead trees and refused to interact with my darling Pocahontas. You're wrong. Now, next question before I lose my temper. You don't want to see me mad.
For question 8, do you know what the colonists came to the new land for?
Well, obviously it was for gold. I mean, they sang an entire song about all the gold they would find. I clearly remember them asking my dear Pocahontas for that strange metal.
You actually got something right. I'm impressed.
Witnessing all my glory, and only now you're impressed by my wondrous knowledge. Next question, so I may best you once more. What is that?
To question 8, how did the natives treat John Smith?
Why, they tried to kill him, that one. Kidnapping poor Pocahontas, his lover, only to try and smash his head in. She barely managed to save him in time.
You do realize that what they were doing was some kind of ritual, right? They never actually tried to kill him. He was basically the ambassador for both of their sides.
Nonsense! They were trying to get revenge after that child murdered Kocoum. If you weren't so hot, why, I'd definitely join them.
Actually, Kocoum wasn't killed until much later.
Oh, really? Then tell me,
Why, Sage must be older than me.
how did he die?
It's written in many different texts that he was killed years after the colonists arrived during an attack on his village.
You speak nonsense.
So says the talking tree.
Next question.
question 10, do you know why John Smith returned to England?
Why, it was that grouchy old Radcliffe, no feeling for his own men, shot the poor, handsome boy through.
You are partially correct. From records that we have, John Smith was in a canoe when the gunpowder in the canoe exploded. Because of the closeness and severity of the explosion, John Smith was sent back to England to get help and healing.
Because of that big old mean Ratcliffe. He'd do anything to get Smithy Pooh out of the picture.
Actually, Ratcliffe had nothing to do with the accident.
Stop! I want to talk about, corn.
Corn. That actually is the topic for my next question. For question 11, do you know how the Native Americans planted their corn?
Of course I do. Pocahontas loved bragging about those neat little rows they would plant those stalks of edible gold.
And you're sure about this?
Of course I am. Why would I lie?
You may, if you weren't aware of the truth, because our info states that they never planted their corn in rows, and that came from other countries.
Corn has betrayed me.
Well, since we are on the topic of plants, I think this is a good time to wrap up this interview with one last question. For question 12, do you realize that your species of willow tree hadn't been introduced to the New World yet? So you physically could not have existed. Well then, thank you for joining us on this interview of Grandmother Willow from Disney's Pocahontas. We have learned some amazing truths about Pocahontas, how oblivious Grandmother Willow is, and